You might think that once you take meat off the heat, you're done cooking. And you're sort of right. You're done cooking, but the meat, it's got a little further to go. Luckily, you don't have to do anything but be patient. I recently asked my coworkers, hey, do you rest meat for the recommended amount of time? More people than I expected said, well, it depends. How about you? Do you rest your meat for the recommended amount of time? And do you know what's going on when meat rests? There's a lot happening after a steak comes out of a pan or a roast comes out of the oven. Initially, they actually increase in temperature. The juices are really moving, but then they start to slow down. Understanding these two things will help you decide when you can rest meat and when you can and should slice and serve immediately. Think of these nesting cups as a roast that's just come out of the oven. Even though you've removed it from the oven when the center reached 140 degrees, its surface is actually a lot hotter. How much hotter? Well, it's going to depend on your oven temperature. Higher oven temperature equals a hotter surface and a bigger difference between the temperature at the surface and here at the center. Why does this matter? Well, that difference in temperature, it's not permanent. Hot food cools as it sits, right? If you were to stick thermometers into the roast just below the surface and at the very center, you'd find that initially it's just the surface that's cooling, while the temperature at the center, it's going to continue to rise. What's heating the center? It's the heat from the surface of the roast. This phenomenon, it's called carryover cooking. A good recipe will take into account all of the factors that affect how much something will carry to determine how long the food should rest. Broadly, larger items can rest longer than smaller ones, and foods cooked at higher temperatures can rest longer than foods cooked at lower temperatures. This means that the temperature that you actively cook to isn't the highest temperature that your meat reaches. As it rests, food continues to cook. This is why you see recipes where chicken is pulled from the oven between 150 and 155 degrees. That cooking method will blast the exterior of the meat with heat, which gets the cooking done quickly, and then during the rest, it's not going to carry past 165 degrees. If you had pulled that chicken at 160 degrees, it would carry too far. And at that point, the white meat, it's going to be dry and wrung out. Cooking the chicken to about 155 degrees and letting the heat at the surface carry the interior up to 160, that's going to ensure the white meat stays juicy. This is also why you see sous vide recipes call for what seems like a slightly high temperature. If you want a mid-rare steak, why cook it in a 130 degree bath instead of one set to 125? The medium rare steaks we're accustomed to eating, they're seared to 125 degrees and then they're rested. During that rest, they carry to around 130 degrees. Now, when you cook a steak in a water bath, there's going to be no differential between the surface and the interior, which means there's no carryover cooking. So, to get the same texture that you'd see in a seared steak, you're going to need your water bath to be at 130 degrees. Now, changes in temperature, they're not the only thing that happens when food rests. Resting helps meat hold on to juices is something we're all taught, and it's true, but the degree to which it's true, that's going to vary. I've got 2 steaks, 2 pork chops, and 2 chicken breasts, and they were all cooked to the recommended temperature, 125 degrees, 140 degrees, and 160 degrees respectively. Let's slice one of each immediately, and we'll let the others rest for 10 minutes before slicing. We're going to do this slicing on paper towels to better see how much juice is released. It's been 10 minutes, let's slice the rested samples. It's clear that the rested samples release less liquid, but what really stands out to me is how much of a difference there is when we're dealing with the chicken and pork. Resting's going to help a medium rare steak hold on to a little more juice, but it really helps a chicken breast hold on to a lot more juice. When foods are cooked to higher temperatures, they automatically lose more liquid. Resting a chicken breast to let it hold on to as much liquid as possible is something you always want to do. Now, these are small pieces of meat. Imagine if you were roasting a turkey breast or a pork loin that has to be carved before it's served. If sliced immediately, they're going to lose a lot of juices because of their temperature, but the sheer number of slices you need to make will make even more escape routes for those precious juices. And they're not just going to leak on the cutting board. Juices are going to continue to pour out after you've arranged the slices on a platter. And if that roast or bird is glazed or topped with a sauce, that sauce or glaze, it's going to be diluted and your beautiful platter is going to be a little bit sloshy and soupy, and it doesn't need to be. Plus, there's no work to letting food rest. Just use the time to do other stuff. Resting does 2 things. It allows for carryover cooking to help a piece of meat coast to a finish, and it helps meat hold on to juices when sliced. Most recipes are going to do the work of figuring out how long something should be rested, but if your recipe doesn't tell you, or you're going rogue, here's what you need to know. Generally, the larger a piece of meat, the higher the internal temperature and the higher the cooking temperature, the longer it can rest. I generally plan on between 30 and 45 minutes for something like a turkey, 15 to 20 minutes for roasts, and 5 to 10 minutes for steaks, chops, and chicken parts. There are also times when it's best to not rest food. I'm making a tartine with pepper-crusted tuna, and I want the fish to have seared edges and a raw interior. This means I need to slice the tuna immediately after it comes out of the skillet. Slicing gives heat at the surface plenty of escape routes, helping that heat dissipate to the air rather than moving to the center of the tuna. This gives the tuna a distinct band at the edges rather than an ombre effect. The other time to skip a rest is if you've overcooked a roast. Just like with the tuna, slicing helps the meat to cool and prevents it from further tightening. Now, this isn't gonna uncook the meat, but it will keep the meat from cooking further. You'll definitely want to catch all the juices that are going to be released and be sure to drizzle them over the sliced meat. This method is best for items that are going to carry substantially, like a large roast or a whole bird. It's a big bite, but it was really good. So there's kind of a retro vibe to this that I really love. The tuna has this lovely complexity from that sear. The pepper is nice and toasty, and the center of the fish is raw and it's meaty. It's delicious. Next time you're cooking meat, plan to give it a rest. That time that it spends doing nothing is time you can use to finish the meal, chat with friends, or just take a short break from the work of cooking. Resting is the ultimate hands-off trick to getting the best results. Thank you for watching. If you found this video useful, be sure to hit the like button and consider subscribing. If you've got a topic you'd like me to cover, head to the comments and let me know.